Alright, so we're going to continue the story on these two. These are the two low profile cooler from Thermalright. And previously we had tested these on the AMD Ryzen 5700X. And they both do very well. But for the form factor, it's basically the design. Unless your motherboard and RAM cannot accommodate this particular version of the low profile cooler, you have to go with this. I think for the profile, this is like within, let's say 5% performance is this one. Now obviously I'm testing this on a 5700X. It is not a very demanding CPU. So today, because it's after Black Friday and I stock up a whole bunch of upgrade parts for myself, we're gonna put those cooler to a test on the i9 3900K. I know it's not a 4900K. I know it's not the X3D chips, but to be honest, for the price, this was going to sell for around, was it 450 Canadian? It would be just around like 370, 360 USD, which is a very good deal. And this motherboard, although it's not a Z790 motherboard, it's a Z690 motherboard, is only going for about like 220, 225 Canadian, which is in turn maybe around 170, 180 USD. And for the price, these two would be the budget option in my opinion for the upgrade. And in terms of my test, they're 3900K. Yes, it doesn't clock as good as the 4900K, but it puts a lot of heat, as much heat as the 4900K. So it'd be a great test for heat test wise to put this CPU against these two coolers, and we're gonna see the results soon. See how well these coolers will stack up. They could very well fail, but I do have other coolers on hand I can sub in for. That would make another video of that. But for now, we're gonna go for these two. I'm gonna assemble the rig and show you what I'm installing, and we'll come back in a bit. So as I'm installing this motherboard, I noticed there's a little riser card, or they call it the front connector card. Very interesting design, and which in this case it should go in like this, because logically dictates that your SATA port should face out, not inwards against your RAM. Other than that, I mean, this board is obviously the ITX board. It's very compact. I'm having a hard time finding all the connectors I needed to connect to my build, but it has everything in it already, and it's a very nice design. And too bad it couldn't fit a onboard diagnose LED of sort in this board, which was kind of a disappointment on my part. But for the price, for its feature set, yeah, that's still great. I'm gonna come back and install the CPU. So in this build, I also add one of these LGA 7000 backplates. I'm pretty sure with the new Intel platform that just came out, they're gonna have a version of that for that too. But for this one, I got also same brand Thermalright, and honestly, it come with thermal paste, also tools, and for the price, can't go wrong with that. So for you to actually do this, you might need to open this first. Now, while you're doing this, be very careful not to damage the pins. Do not drop anything on it, because you're going to end up having bent pins. Just give it a little more patient. You don't have to rush through it. Just jiggle through it. Once you're done on one side, you drop this. You do this side. Yep. And there goes the back plate. And then you take this out. And you do the reverse. And you're gonna reutilize those screws I just took out. You're gonna line up the notches. See, there's a notch there, a notch there, a notch there. And if you look towards your motherboard, you're gonna try and locate those notches. So you kind of line up first. Obviously you want this after you insert the CPU. So I'm gonna grab the CPU, I'm gonna pop in there, and then I'm gonna screw that down. So I just popped the CPU in there, and these notches, I just realized really you don't need to follow these. You just have to aim on the arrow. You aim on the arrow on the CPU, you aim on the arrow on that side, and you just pop that in there, right? I'll line up all the arrows, and then you take the screw from the previous bracket. I would personally just kind of pop in there and it sits. And take that and then it's sitting there. Now remember that metal bracket that was dropped? Well, now you have to put it back in. Now, if you look at the orientation of that, these two are wide, these two are narrow. You line up the wide and narrow, and make sure this non-conductive side is facing inwards towards the motherboard. Pop that in there. Obviously, I'm right-handed, but I'm pretty sure I could use my left to screw these in for now. Just slowly, gently. You could feel the screw is going through the holes of the back plate. Just gently mount them. You don't need to tighten just yet. Once you have all of them in there, you just do, a cross pattern on that. So very gentle until you feel a little bit of friction. just keep doing that. I won't recommend use that to crank too hard of a torque. So in order to torque it down, I just take this and do maybe like a quarter turn. Not even a quarter turn, probably a 1/8 of a turn, just to torque it down. Avoiding using too much pressure. Like, you don't really want to really, like, you know, torque it, because this is not a, you know, car or anything. You don't need to have a certain high amount of torque. You just want it to be there tight, right? So once you have that sit in there, now you could install your cooler. Now with Thermalright coolers, in my previous video I did explain about this bracket and the spacer associated with it. So the key thing, the main thing when you're mounting these, so when you're selecting the outer bracket, which is the outer bracket of, you know, the CPU, which in this motherboard it supports both the older Intel bracket size, which is like the, you know, 1200, 1151, 1150. But I'm gonna use the 1700, which is the outer bracket. But for you gotta have to use the spacer. These spacers can make your build, because I have mistakenly not put these spacer in. Not only is harder to install, but when I was torquing it down, the bracket back here will bend and it will come in contact with your motherboard, and it will cause problems if there's components near those areas. So in this case, I'm just gonna pre-assemble these. Right, like so. Remember to line up all of them equally using the outer perimeter of the size. And for me, I'm a little bit OCD. I want all, like, this is all equal. I want them to all face up, so I'm just gonna go do like this. I see them like this, I flip them over. That's how I'm gonna install it. So I'm gonna flip it over, come to the back of the motherboard, and I'll pop that in there. If you're actually working with a flat surface, you actually don't need to worry about it falling out. I'm gonna use, you know, just the my hands to support them. I'll put these Intel spacers in there. So while that's in there, I'm gonna take out my Intel brackets. Now, if you haven't noticed, this is perfectly square. And sometimes you could put it this way. Sometimes you could put it that way. Now, the key thing is for me is that I need to worry about the fitment. So I'll take my cooler and I'll pop it in a particular direction like this. See how this one will not fit. pop it around like so. Yeah, it looks like it'll fit. And I'll pop it in like that. And that's not gonna fit because the height of this component, and obviously I'm not able to fit this way because of the height of this. So the only way I can do this is probably like this. And that's the only way, right? But if you think about it, the mounting screws are over here. Take your brackets and you lay it down like that, and that is how you're supposed to mount them in this particular build. So I'm gonna take this, mount these brackets down like so. I'm going to take the screws, pop it in there, just hand tie them. At this moment I would actually want to pick it up just so I can kind of see how it's all lined up. And I'll use my hand, keep tying them until they're hand tight. Now in this particular build, you will actually want to like pre-mount this. The reason why I'm saying that is if you don't pre-mount this, because of the height restriction, you might not able to get everything all lined up. So what I mean by that is if you don't pre-mount all of this, you might not have a full contact with your cooler. So pre-mount, what I mean by that is you don't apply thermal paste. You just kind of put the cooler down and you see if it actually stays flush with the motherboard. So in this case, I also need to install my RAM too, just because I'm gonna have very little space to work with. So in this case, I have some Teen Groove, T-Crate, some basic 32 gig RAM. Are not the fastest RAM, but for where it is, I know it's gonna work and boot. And also for the design of this motherboard, this heatsink is actually come in contact with this component over here. It's a little bit, give you a little bit more friction, but if you just massage it down a little bit, it should fit. And now you put in the other stick of RAM. It's nice flush, nice black. Now in terms of pre-mount, still plastic in there. I'm gonna actually put it down this way. One other thing is I want to connect my CPU connector, because that's gonna be hard to get at. especially in the case. I'm gonna try and line them up as best I can. And wiggle that. It does seems to be able to fit in there. Now I'm just gonna tighten it down a little bit. See if it actually catches. Okay. Man, this tolerance is so low that you do not have any playroom with at all. Like just think about it. If you got a little bit of higher of RAM stick sits there, or you know, a higher little heatsink on the side, or a awkward capacitor popping out on the side, yeah, you're gonna run into a lot of problems while installing this cooler. So it's tight. It's not hitting anything. I don't see it hitting anything. Now obviously look at this guy. So much spacing. You're gonna have so much room to work with. But because it's an ITX build, you're gonna have some spacing restriction. Now in this particular build, I'm not gonna use the thermal pad I use on the 5700X, just because that thermal pad that actually gone through a couple on installation, and the installation is in very bad shape. And what I'm gonna end up using just the standard good old thermal paste that came with the box. And Thermalright do include new thermal paste in every single product that they sell. And just by looking at the 3 boxes that I have 3 stick of these thermal paste. And weird thing is, they're about the same size, but depends on which product you buy, you're gonna get more or less of the same thermal paste. So I believe this one came with the bracket, and this one came with the cooler. Let me find the other pack. Where is the other pack? Well, it looks like I can't find it. Well, that's okay. I'm gonna just use this. Usually, you want to clean this area a little bit with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. Which I do over here. You want to grab a nice little rag. But in my case, I'm gonna use kitchen towel. You just have to dab it, get it a little bit wet, and just clean that surface. And air dry, and because previously I also used this cooler. I also want to clean that. Normally you don't have to. You want to air dry a little bit. If you see a little bit of paper shreds, give it a nice little blow. It should come right off. Alright. So, for the thermal paste, I just do a little X. There's a couple dots on the side. Really, it's a little bit of too much, but it wouldn't hurt. And it's nice and gooey. Nice and gooey. Yummy. I'll take that cooler. Now I see some people, they'll, you know, smush it and try to like even out. In my opinion, really there's no need, because once you apply the pressure, the cooler and the pressure itself will compress the thermal paste, and it will actually spread out quite evenly if you actually mount it properly. So right now there's quite a bit of lining up to do, just because I got thermal paste and it's actually very sticky. Doesn't want to like sit in properly, but I got the 2 screws, so catching all the threads. Nice and firm. And then pop in the original cooler that come with it. Put down to the CPU fan feather, and then use its mounting mechanism. Actually, want to rotate that this way. Clip that in there. Put that in there. Now that's it. I'm finished installing the cooler. I'm going to come back and actually show you after when I install Windows and all the other components of what the initial idle temperature looks like. Alright. It's boot up already. And initially I did not find LEDs, but there are a couple diagnosed LEDs sitting right on the side here. I can see. And they're in different colors. I believe red is CPU, yellow is for DRAM, green is running, and white is good. Just kind of waiting for it to cycle through and boot up the BIOS. But yeah, I start liking this board. Oh, it's trying to load into Windows from the previous install to 5700X install. I'm not sure it's gonna boot, but I'm ready to do a fresh reinstall. currently it's nice and quiet. Okay, it's gonna take a while. I'm gonna come back and see the results. Alright, I'm lower into BIOS and it's idling about 49, 48 degrees, and I am actually going through the BIOS to see what sort of BIOS version is running. I think I need to do a BIOS update on this because it doesn't have the Intel limits inside this list. I'll do that BIOS update and then we'll be right back. Alright, I got myself a coffee, and while I was doing that, the BIOS has finished updating. And if you look closely over here, it says Intel default settings. Woohoo! That just means that it's obeying Intel rules. And remember what I just mentioned when I just boot up with the previous BIOS, the temperature was sitting around 48, 49 degrees. Now with the Intel default settings, it's sitting at 43 degrees. And there's two options in here. It says performance and extreme Intel default settings. I don't know actually what this means, so I'm gonna take a look. So 253 watts for these CPUs. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna enable XMP first. I really don't think this feature will so I believe for the 13900K, the performance and extreme profiles actually runs the same. Oh no. So basically the extreme basic what it just means that if you're running a 13900KS and a 14900KS, it'll be running at 320 watts. And since I'm only running a 13900K and in this scenario, but if you have a 14900K, it'll be running at 253 watts. So if you have this either on stream and performance, it's the exact same settings for this particular CPU for the 13900K or 14900K. To be honest, that's all the settings I'm going to be changing, which is SMP, and I'm gonna save, change, and reset. And I'm pretty sure I have to reinstall Windows, and I'll be back once I finish with that. Alright, finally got it running. I didn't have to reinstall Windows, but I do have to reset my pin for Windows 11, which is a pain in the ass. But I'm here now, and the system right now is idling about 33 degrees. At some point it peaked about 55. So I'm actually gonna just reset the timer. Just like my last run, I'm gonna log this. I'm gonna name this 1 and save. And I'm gonna go back here. We're gonna do that 10-minute test. And I'll come back in 10 minutes and go through the results. Ooh, the fan's already spinning up like crazy. Darn, it's actually quite loud. But you know what? It's acceptable loudness, especially you're pushing through a lot of workload in this case. I'm promising coming back in a bit, but just wanna actually run it for a little bit to see. Damn. It's spinning. Alright. Okay, see you guys in a bit. Alright, we're almost done the test here, but man, this thing runs hot. And if you notice that the red LED is on, it means it's not happy with the CPU right now. It's throttling, definitely throttling for sure. Right now it runs about 100 degrees package temperature. The fastest clock is running about 5800. How much power is it using? Let's see. No. Okay. Where's power? CPU package power is doing about 223 or 216 on average. You know, it's quite a bit for this, even for the Intel limits on it, and it's like, damn, the thing is hot. Well, the red LED is definitely disappeared. It's happy now. We're gonna stop capturing the data. In this case, we cannot definitively, how I say, you know, test it based on cooler temperature, just because I'm pretty sure it's gonna throttle. So what I'm gonna end up doing is that for every single one of these tests, I'm gonna do a 1 dot with the Cinebench performance score. R23. And yeah, it's a hot boy. I'm gonna actually swap out the fan now. We'll come back in a bit. Alright, swap out the fan. I'm gonna reset the timers, capture data. In this case, I'm gonna start with 2, and hopefully this thing will stay cool. Probably not, just because of I'm already hearing this fan spinning like crazy. Temperature is coming up, and honestly, it's creeping up to 100, but not as bad as the previous fan setup. Ooh, it's running hot. Okay. Well, we're gonna leave this thing running, and we'll come back in 10 minutes. Alright, we're coming up in 40 seconds of finishing the test, but this thing is running a little bit of cooler compared to the previous setup. The fan is definitely loud. To be honest, under load, the noise profile of these two fans really does not make any difference at this point. They're both very pitchy, both very loud. They do have a slight difference, but really it's the same in my books. Especially you have to put this inside a case. Now obviously if you put this inside a case, depends on the thickness, you might need to use the bigger fan just because you want to actually build up some pressure. But in this case, I think maybe the Arctic cooling fan will actually perform the best among the two stock fans that came with the Thermalright coolers. So with that said, I'm actually gonna install the cooler. I'll be right back. Alright, I replaced the fan using one of my old Arctic 120mm fan on this low profile cooler. I do like the height, but the performance on this is just not adequate. I'm gonna start that 10-minute test again, and we'll come back in 10 and see the performance on it. It is better than the Thermalright stock fan. I'll be back. Alright, we're just coming up finishing this test here, and for the better, for the worse, the fan is definitely quieter. So if you know, you're planning to grab one of these Thermalright low profile coolers, I suggest you grab one of the cheap Arctic fans to pair with it, because it is just quieter. In terms like performance points, let's see. So from the previous score on its default fan, it's about 34,228, and for this run with the Arctic fan, it's only about 33,925. So it is definitely performed a little bit less compared to its stock fan, but your trade-off is the quietness. And obviously it's still thermal throttles, but that's the nature of the beast. Is if you are trying to fit the 13900K into a small form factor build, but you're unable to put in a 240mm AL cooler, or there's some sort of noise restriction or anything that would restrict you from using the 240, this is your better option. But it does thermal throttle, so we're gonna actually swap out with this little bit thicker cooler for the test, and hopefully this one will actually do not thermal throttle compared to the other one. Well, I'll be right back after I install this. Alright, finally put the cooler back onto the socket using the higher low profile cooler from Thermalright. Now for this particular test, I'm actually using the thinner fan from the other low profile cooler, and I'm already seeing a little bit of difference in terms like actual thermal capacity. I wouldn't say it's doing I wouldn't say it will outperform in long test, just because I don't think the cooler is able to hold that much of heat and dissipate that fast enough. So in this test again, I'm gonna record this. It's gonna be 3, and we're gonna stress this test for 10 minutes. And when this fan is blasting at this particular speed, so on the 5700X I tested before, the fan actually never got to this speed. So for the better, for the worse, for a low power consumption CPU, the low profile cooler works just fine. and it's actually, in my opinion, outdone itself by basically, you know, like having its, you know, the size advantage and, you know, the compatibility of a case advantage. I would go for this particular cooler over that one for 5700X. Now we're running at 13900K now, and I'm already into running this for 2 minutes, and it's thermal throttling already. But I would presume the score will be a little bit higher, and we'll see you back in like 10 minutes, and then we'll see the results. Alright, we're just finishing up this test, 40 seconds in, and you probably notice the fan is spinning up quite loud, like I said before. It's still thermal throttling according to the LED. It's definitely showing 100 degrees over here, but I do see the CPU package power consumption just raised tack a bit more compared to this cooler. So with the same fans, they're almost identical cooler in my opinion. It didn't benefit from its size, but from the score, I do see there's a higher score, which is about 34026. Now I'm gonna record that, and I'm gonna swap out the fan, and then we can go from there. We'll come back. Alright, for this run I swapped out the stock cooler for this particular cooler. Like every other run, I'm gonna start recording, and we're gonna run the test for 10 minutes, and the initial impression is this fan is super loud. Obviously it might be optimized for this cooler. We'll see at the results, and I'm slowly seeing the package temperature rise, and we'll give you the results after 10 minutes. Alright, we're just coming up finishing this test. This fan still just like a rocket engine, super loud, but it is definitely pulling the performance. We're gonna see the score in a bit. One last bit of run. There we go. 3, 4, 6, 1, 2. How does that compare? Alright, we're gonna stop the recording. Stop. 3, 4, 6. Well, it is definitely the highest score yet, but not by much. 3, 4, 6, 1, 2. Put that in there. 3, 4, 6, 1, 2. Well, I'm gonna swap it out for the Arctic cooling fan, and we're gonna do one last test and see what the score will be. Alright, we're just coming out our last run. There's the Arctic cooling fan. Now, you hear this? Super, super quiet. And we're gonna start logging the file. Name that to 4.5. And then I'm gonna start that run. I'm pretty sure it's still gonna thermal throttle just because the cooler design. But yeah, so much quieter. So much quieter, yeah. We're gonna see the score after a little bit, and we'll come back in a bit. Alright, last test work. This one is super quiet and it's, you know, just finishing up, and I think it's gonna do okay. The score is 34114, and the package temp still stuck around 220. Honestly, like if I were actually, you know, limited to the size, just like the 5700X, I will use this cooler with this fan and I will call it a day. The only reason I would stay out of this cooler if your motherboard cannot fit this. And now obviously if you're stuck with this particular case, your choices are either change the motherboard or change the case. I think for most people they'll end up changing their case. Obviously it's a cheaper component to return and swap, but since I already did the test, I will definitely recommend this guy with this fan, the Arctic cooling fan. And to wrap it up anyways, in terms like the coolers, they're pretty good design. I would never use it to, you know, cool the 13900K just because of the thermal throttle issues, and I wouldn't you know, put any of these coolers on, you know, on a 250 watt power limit. It is pretty impressive it's able to push them up to 223, 220, but you know, if you're determined to use this particular setup, then you're kind of stuck to have the thermal throttle issue. And that's the end of this particular video. I will add the results at the very end of the video to show you the benchmark results and temperature results, and we'll see you next time.